Hello again, this is David Coyle, and thank you for joining me again for Real Life Worth Living. We're picking up, as we said last time, in James chapter 3, and we want to review a couple of things in verses 1 and 2, and then move on into verse 3. Actually, we get to make a big jump because there is an analogy given that takes up several verses. And we're going to highlight each of those a little bit. We're going to talk about them a little bit and then move on from there to the place where we can add to the instruction that we've been given thus far and carry us forward then into the rest of the instruction that the book of James has for us. Now, we noticed in verse 1, we are not to be many masters. That is, teachers. The word there is didaskaloi, teachers. And we are to be very careful to be sure that we who teach are teaching because God has called us, that God has gifted us and has given us the message to give, and that what we're teaching is the Word of God and not some contention of our own, not some secret message of our own. You have to start to worry when you hear somebody say, now here's something brand new, it's never been taught before. You have to worry about that because that's not the Word of God. And that is a private interpretation. That is a misinterpretation. That is a false interpretation. We are also told that as we speak, and I would also say especially as we speak the Word of God, we offend many in word. And that if someone can actually speak the truth and not offend anybody, he's a whole lot more perfect than I am. And it says that right there in verse 2. But that person is able then to completely control his whole being, his whole body. If he's controlling his tongue, it's because he can control his mind. He is controlling his speech. He is controlling his activities, his works. He is controlling his whole being. In verse 3, let's look at verses 3 through 6. He says, behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which, though they be so great and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. Now, I know there may be some terminology there that's strange to us, but let's look at it here as we look down over these verses and see what James is trying to tell us here. He is giving us a few illustrations of things that are small, but control vast power, demonstrate vast power. They can do great things They can cause great damage. The first illustration he gives us is that of putting bits into the mouths of horses so that they can be led left or right or stopped or spurred on, hurried on their way. And we have the control over these great animals that might be 1,000 pounds or so, might be 800 pounds, depending on the breed of the horse. Certainly an American quarter horse isn't going to be as massive and heavy and strong as a percheron used to work the fields, but still he is a massive and bulky and strong animal, and able to do great things and able to do great damage if allowed to run out on his own without any kind of constraints or controls upon him at all. And so bits are inserted into the horse's mouths so that the reins or the lines can be pulled to direct him in the course where he is supposed to go, whether he's plowing a row or pulling a load, or whether he is providing transportation for one rider. Secondly, he shows us the example of a great ship that may have a draft of hundreds of tons, a displacement rate of hundreds of tons of water, and is capable of carrying hundreds of tons in its hold as far as cargo goes. And yet this great ship, and he says here the great ships that are driven by fierce winds, he's talking about sailing vessels. In his day they were sailing vessels. Later came steam power, later came diesel power, later came nuclear power. But all of these ships bear one thing in common. They are all steered about by a small helm, by the wheel on the bridge that turns one way or the other, that determines how many degrees to the right or to the left or whatever the ship is to turn in order to carry its cargo to a designated port. And yet, if allowed to run free, if the helm is not controlled, it can create great damage. This mammoth of a ship, with all of its cargo and possibly even all of its sailors, may possibly go to the bottom of the sea, and there would be tremendous loss of life as well as loss of value and the loss of this tremendous ship. That's the second example that he gives us of great things that are controlled by small members. And then he comes to the third one in verse 6, the tongue. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity without control. An uncontrolled tongue with an uncontrolled mind, in an uncontrolled person who has not been changed by the power of Jesus Christ, who has not been reborn by putting his trust in Jesus Christ, who has not had his sin changed into a new nature, but instead is still living under the old nature, is capable of producing great, tremendous iniquity, a world of iniquity, he says. So is the tongue among our members. Now let me suggest here that he's saying, when he says among our members, he's bringing it now into the body of believers, and he's saying among our members as believers, that it is capable of defiling the body, soul, and spirit, as well as producing great good for the cause of Christ. We'll pick it up here next time. Our time is shot for this session.